Freddie Freeman replacements, week 3 sleepers, and 2 start pitchers. Up next on a Kokomo Friday.
Alcantara, Soroka, you look so good in Boca. Peralta, Manoa, bounce back for Aarondola. Giolito, Castillo, Yoshida, Mosuzuka.
Happy Kokomo Friday and welcome in to Fantasy Baseball today on April 4th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Today on the show, Freddie Freeman is going on the IL. That means we need replacements. I have a what if segment planned, week 3 sleepers, 2-star pitchers, and much more. Let's jump in.
Can you believe it? Wow.
All right, Scott, busy day, 5-game slate.
What are we going to talk about?
We've got to figure out which players did something. And with that, you're up, player of the night.
All right. I kind of wanted to go with Rafael Devers because I think he's probably fine, but it sounds like you and Chris talked about that. Pretty much said everything I have to say on that front last night. I'll go ahead and bring up Rafael Devers today. His bat speed was on his 3 at bats 73.6, 73.2, 72.9, which is basically normal Rafael Devers. He had the 2 balls hit 109 miles per hour yesterday. I think it's fine. I think if you didn't panic and do anything crazy that first week where everybody was acting like the sky is falling, you should breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, so that's not my player of the night, Rafael Devers. His teammate is my player of the night, and that is Kristian Campbell, who is off to a great start and had another good game here on Thursday, 2 for 4 with a single and his second home run. Both of them hit more than 104 miles per hour. He's been hitting the ball plenty hard, but more than that is the plate discipline he's demonstrated, which was part of the profile in his breakout season in the minors last year. So it's not a total shock. It's just, remember how spring training played out for him, where it just seemed like he couldn't catch up to major league fastballs and his strikeout rate was through the roof. It is now, after this latest game, 18%, the strikeout rate. And he's doing great. Those issues from spring training seem to have worked themselves out just in time for the start of the season. And so apparently the Red Sox knew what they were doing all along. And the price remained reasonable for Kristian Campbell throughout draft prep season. So I feel pretty comfortable saying it's not going to be a Jackson Holiday, a situation like Jackson Holiday last year. And part of me wonders, like, what was it all for? What was closely monitoring all these different players in spring training really for? Because I feel like I'm not sure we learned anything. I'm not sure I'm not sure the biggest takeaways from spring training, whether you talk about Clay Holmes or Gavin Williams or Kristian Campbell or whatever, I'm not sure any of them have panned out. And I mean, I know why we talk about it, because we have to have things to talk about. And those are things people are paying attention to. And, you know, we have to do that. But maybe the right advice is long-standing advice. Kind of the long-standing default when it comes to spring training is just ignore it. I'm not saying nothing ever happens in spring training that changes a player's trajectory. Certainly things do, but are we that good at identifying them that we actually come out ahead by obsessing about it? And I'm not sure that we are. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
No, it's a good question. I mean, some of those pitchers that we continuously talked about in spring, they were doing new things, right? It's Clay Holmes has new pitches, and Gavin Williams was, his fastball IVB was up, and he was getting all these whiffs on his fastball. And, so things like that, I feel like it's worth talking about. But, I mean, to your broader point here, Clay Holmes through 2 starts looks like a reliever who is transitioning to being a starter, and that it's going to take more time than we thought here. So,
yeah, they're worth talking about, but they end up rocketing up the rankings, maybe just because we're talking about them. Other people are talking about them too. Don't get me wrong, but I think we have a certain amount of influence over the whole fantasy baseball culture, and I don't know. It's I don't know. And look, we only have 1 start from Gavin Williams. Maybe he gets a dozen whiffs on his fastball in his next one, and it turns out to be. It turns out our energy was properly placed for him. Clay Holmes, his second start wasn't great, but there were signs there of improvement from the first start, and I'm not totally without hope for him and suggesting people drop him and everything. But when you add this Kristian Campbell thing, I'm thinking back to the horrors that I experienced as somebody who invested heavily in Jackson Holiday last year, and I'm seeing a lot of the same problems here. We can't count even the highest end prospects. We can't necessarily count on them being impactful right out of the gate. Looks like he's impactful right out of the gate. So I don't know. And at the end of the day, how much do I really know? How much does anybody really know?
How much does spring really matter? And that will be an ongoing question. Yeah, maybe we get wrapped up in a little bit, too much. We're just so close to it during spring, and we're just observing every little minutia and every little thing that we possibly can. And I don't know, maybe we're just overanalyzing because baseball's back and we want something to look at. It's certainly possible. Part of my what if segment for later on is, what if Kristian Campbell is a top 10 second baseman as a rookie this season? And Scott, you moved them all the way up to your 9th ranked second baseman already. So I guess tell me, what would that look like, right? If you're just kind of projecting this out, what does a top 10 Kristian Campbell season look like at the second base position?
Well, part of the reason I felt comfortable moving him into the top 10 already is because there are just so few high-end second basemen. So it wasn't much of a stretch to move him past Bryce Terang, for instance, who's somebody I don't even believe in. Brandon Lau, I believe in a little more, but he always has his playing time issues and his health issues. And if I had Brandon Lau, somebody offered me Kristian Campbell for him today, yeah, I'd make that trade. So that's part of it. I think the threshold for a top 10 season at second base is pretty low. But I mean, Campbell could breeze past that. Campbell could compete with the top 5 at second base, which is, it ends with Jordan Westberg. Could Kristian Campbell's numbers rival Jordan Westberg's this year? Sure, they could. I think he's a better plate discipline guy. I think he's a better base stealer. I guess what I'm envisioning for Kristian Campbell at this point, it's hard to put an exact line on it because I think the upside is so high. But if I'm going to estimate conservatively, let's give him a 260 average and 2020 with close to a 350 OBP.
That would be tremendous. Yeah, that's probably close to a top 5 second baseman if he could pull something like that off. So,
does that sound too aggressive to you? I mean, what are you envisioning?
Yeah, I think that's more of a higher end outcome. If I'm just talking conservatively, I would say probably 15-15 with a helpful batting average. So 260, 270, 15-15. That would still be a really good, season for a rookie and for a second baseman. But yeah, I mean, obviously he has the pedigree.
He looks better than that to me.
Yeah,
I guess he hasn't stolen a base yet, has he? No,
I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't know. I think he's good. Bottom line, I think he's good.
All right, let's talk about JT Realmuto, my player of the night here, who goes 3 for 3 with a walk and 2 steals. That's 2 steals in 5 games He had 2 steals in 99 games all of last year. And last time he had 2 steals in a game was May 16th of 2023. So Realmuto dealt with the knee injury last year. He had the in-season surgery. He came back from that and obviously didn't really run much last season at all. But back to that what if segment. What if JT Realmuto is healthy and he's running this season? Well, if that's the case, he could get back to being a top 5 catcher in fantasy. Not saying that's going to happen, but I thought this was a really, really encouraging game here for Realmuto where, you know, everything else that he did last season was pretty much in line with who he is, right? It's a kind of middling batting average, 250, 260. Power was still okay. I think he can approach 20 home runs. He's in a really good lineup, so counting stats should be there. Maybe he doesn't play as much as he did in years past because it sounds like they want to, you know, play it a little bit safer with Realmuto this season. But yeah, if he can get back to like 10 to 15 steals with 18 to 20 home runs, that's a top 5 catcher in fantasy. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's a possibility.
Oh, yeah. No, I think he's basically the same. The steals were the main concern, and he said his knees were feeling great this spring. He wanted to get back to that. Should you have ignored that because he said it in the spring? I mean, I think you could have intuited it, whether he said it or not, just given the time he missed with the torn meniscus in the knee last year. But the decline as a hitter has been minimal. And I thought he was sliding too far in drafts. So, yeah, I think JT Realmuto, him stealing 2 bases in one game is a good reminder of what he can do for you as your starting catcher. And I think you'll be happy with him there.
Yeah, I think we have him on that NFBC team that we all drafted together. So,
oh, good. I got him somewhere. He fell so far in some 2-catcher leagues, and I just... like right when I was like, okay, I got to take him. Somebody took him. So I didn't actually end up with, well, I guess just the 1 share. Yeah.
Again, that was JT Realmuto that we were talking about. Wanted to quickly mention an interesting stat that I saw. The Reds are the first team since 1960 to lose 1-zip 3 games in a row. So let's get those bats going again, right? That would be pretty nice here for the Reds who, they're making history for the wrong reasons right now. Before we hit our first break, make sure to download and follow our 10-minute podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we'll have a bonus prospect episode coming out every Saturday in season. And thank you to those who are watching us live. I know it's really late here on the East Coast, but wherever you're watching, thank you for being here. Hit the like button and subscribe on the YouTube channel, to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Let's take a break, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back in. News and notes. Freddie Freeman was placed on the IL with that ankle injury, retroactive to March 31st. And it looks like Enrique Hernandez is in line for more playing time here. Don't really think it matters too much outside of the deepest of leagues, but we need replacements. And a little sneak peek at your sleeper hitters, Scott. You have 3 first basemen on the list: Rhys Hoskins, Spencer Torkelson, and Ryan Mountcastle.
There you go. Those are 3 that you could potentially pick up. I'll note also the Cubs are only facing right-handers next week. Some tough pitchers in there, but only right-handers means probably Michael Busch will start every game. So that's another possibility. It's a good position. If you need a fill-in, it's a good position right now. There are plenty of choices. Let's see. Anybody else who almost made the cut? I think that's it. But there are plenty of choices. Oh, Pavin Smith is first base eligible, I believe. And the Diamondbacks have only 1 left-hander. Actually, I think he's just outfield. So Pavin Smith won't work.
Yeah,
he did start at first base today, though, in real life. IRL.
I did want to quickly pull up the Rays. Do you know the Rays schedule by any chance? If Ronda?
Yeah, they're going to face 2 left-handers in their 6 games, and I would imagine he would sit those games. The matchups aren't the greatest. They're not terrible, but they're not the greatest.
Okay. Yeah, that's more so a name, I guess, in slightly deeper formats, maybe like 12-team roto if you're looking for a corner infielder or something. I did want to quickly pull up Ben Rice as well. The Yankees here have, looks like
2
two
lefties.
lefties on the schedule as well. So yeah, same thing going on with Rice and Aranda for next week. They'll probably
And
still
also the 5th worst matchups for the Yankees.
Yeah.
5th worst hitter matchups.
Some names in deeper leagues, much deeper leagues: Gavin Sheets, Carlos Santana, Josh Bell, and Wilmer Flores. So if you play in 15-team roto, you need a Freeman replacement. Those are some names that you can look at there.
A couple other angles here with the Freeman injury. I'm going to guess it's just a 1-week fill-in you need. I was watching video of him jogging on the field basically yesterday. So I think it's just, okay, it's a 10-day IL now. It's not 15 days for hitters like it was not so long ago. He's already missed a few days. We're the Dodgers. We're 8-0. Let's just make sure he's totally feeling good before we bring him back. So that's the one thing is I don't imagine it's going to be a long-term stay. And the other thing is, could Dalton Rushing, I always want to call him Dalton Varsho. Could Dalton Rushing be the one who fills his spot? He has already started at first base in the minors after getting some exposure to left field late last season. And of course, he's a catcher by trade. Will Smith has played more consistently than I was expecting. I think he's started every game but one for the Dodgers, 7 of the 8, and played well. So if they are going to get rushing at bats, only so many are going to come at catcher. I don't know. He's somebody I wrote about in the prospect report that came out Wednesday because I saw he played some first base and because it seems like Freddie Freeman's might have to manage this ankle injury a little bit over the course of the season, and maybe between first base, catcher, occasional appearances in the outfield, maybe the Dodgers can carve out a role for rushing that way. And of course, he'll be catcher eligible in fantasy regardless of where he's playing. So just something to keep an eye on. I don't know that now's the time, but there is an opening on the roster.
Yeah, Dalton Rushing has 30 career games started at first base in the minors. So it's not impossible. I would bet against it happening. I feel like whenever they call him up, they probably want him to get at least semi-regular playing time. And I guess he could do that for the next week or so. But once Freeman is back, it's a little bit dicey there. So I would bet against it, but I would love to be wrong. The more I love getting prospects called up and seeing what they could do. But we'll see what the Dodgers do here in Freeman's absence. Gunnar Henderson is expected to be activated Friday against the Royals. Ranger Suarez could face live hitters before the end of the week. He's on the IL with lower back stiffness. The Braves transferred Ronaldo Lopez to the 60-day IL. No surprise, he's scheduled for arthroscopic surgery on his right shoulder. Edward Cabrera tossed 3 innings in a rehab start on Tuesday. He'll likely need 1 or 2 more outings before rejoining the Marlins. Lucas Giolito threw 51 pitches over 2 1/3 innings in his first rehab start at AAA. He'll need at least 2 more rehab outings before he joins the Red Sox rotation. This one is not confusing at all. The Mariners are calling up Luis F. Castillo to start on Friday. That's right. A completely different Luis Castillo. So now we have to look for the initial in the box score whenever they're pitching on the mound, which is pretty frustrating. But
and you know who started the last game for the Mariners? Luis Castillo.
That's right.
So they're gonna next week. They're scheduled to go on back-to-back days.
Oh gosh, it's it's gonna be confusing. This Luis Castillo is 30 years old. He has not pitched in the majors since 2022, and he spent the past 2 years in Japan, where he pitched well, showed great command, but also did not get many strikeouts at all. I assume we have no interest in the other Luis Castillo.
Nope, no interest in him. I mean, I suppose it could change if he performs well enough, but I'm not anticipating that.
All right, some injury updates that I saw for prospects. Maybe names that could make an impact. Well, actually, some of these guys will not make an impact this season. But if you have them on your dynasty team, Rays first base prospect Xavier Isaac is on the IL at AA with a left elbow injury. Brewers catcher Jefferson Caro is delayed by a hamstring injury. Braves pitching prospect Cam Caminiti is rehabbing forearm tendonitis, and Rays outfielder Theo Gillen is dealing with a calf injury. Let's get back into the what if segment. We already spoke about Kristian Campbell and JT Realmuto. Jose Altuve, 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts on Thursday. First time he has done that in his career. Scott, what if age is catching up to Jose Altuve?
Well, I suppose it's possible. There have been a lot of those 5 strikeout games already, right? Isn't this the third one? And all from surprising people. Well,
Jackson Churio had one on opening day, I think.
Oh, so maybe there's 4, or Brent Rooker, I guess, had a 4 strikeout game. All from good players. Is the Dylan Cruz had one. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be happening. I don't know if a random 5 strikeout game on April 3rd is enough for me to say it's definitely happening. But he's in his mid-30s now, and it looked like his power took a little bit of a step back last year. The strikeout rate remained fine for what it's worth, so we hadn't really seen evidence of that declining. But that's particularly on fastballs. Swinging and missing on fastballs is something that happens a lot as hitters get older. So it's something to keep an eye on, but I'm not panicking about it.
Yeah. I don't know.
If it happens, then Kristian Campbell, that's another way Kristian Campbell could enter the top 5.
You are correct. I don't necessarily believe all these things, by the way, but just presenting them as possibilities this season. Jose Altuve last year had a career high O swing and career high swinging strike rate. So,
yes,
some things under the hood with the plate discipline that, he was still good. He was still viable for fantasy, obviously, but he's turning 35 in May. It's a possibility. I think more likely is that Altuve will still have a productive season this year. Let's talk about Cedric Mullins and Kyle Schwarber, both off to great starts. Mullins 1 for 3 with a sock and a shoe, his 3rd home run, his 2nd stolen base. And Kyle Schwarber hit a monster home run, his 4th of the season, nearly a 110 exit velocity, 444 feet. This one I'm just going to say in jest, Scott, but what if contract years are a real thing? Because both Cedric Mullins and Kyle Schwarber are in contract years this year. So how about that?
I mean, it's hard to imagine Kyle Schwarber improving that much on last year, especially. I mean, really the last few years, he's been so steady. Not always... there's been some trade-off there with batting average and home runs, but just in terms of overall impact. And I'll point out, Schwarber was back in the leadoff spot today. Alec Boehm had been hitting second with Trey Turner leading off, but Turner was second. Boehm was further down the lineup where he probably should be. Schwarber back in the leadoff spot. So hopefully that's going to return to being a thing for him.
I think it might just be for lefties that they want to do Turner at leadoff and Schwarber cleanup. But I could be wrong. They were facing a righty today, so.
Yeah. So that's good. With the thing about Cedric Mullins is it's not totally up to him. Oh, you're right. Schwarber's been batting leadoff he's been batting leadoff most days. I know Turner's been out, but yeah. Okay. That's probably a non-issue then. The thing with Cedric Mullins is he only has so much control over it anyway, because they're sitting him against left-handers. So I think he'll be good against right-handers, and I think the power speed combo is enough that in 5 outfielder leagues and roto leagues, certainly you just start him and don't worry about it too much. Mm-hmm. But it's unlikely. It's not outside the realm of possibility. It wasn't that long ago he's an everyday player, but I don't think that's the Orioles' wish or plan.
I don't know if they have faced a left-handed starting pitcher so far, but Cedric Mullins has started all 7 games for them this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think off the top of my head all these matchups. Like, they faced the Blue Jays for 4. I don't think there would have been a lefty in there. And then the Red Sox.
They did face 2 lefties. Man, I could have sworn he was out of the lineup earlier this year.
Yeah, he started all 7 games.
start over because I'm speaking nonsense for all these players. Clearly, I imagine I saw things that I didn't see. Yeah, Mullins has started against the two left-handers, so I don't know. Maybe he'll go 20-30 this year. He wasn't that far off last year.
Yeah, 18-32, right? I mean, the biggest thing for Mullins is if he could get the batting average back up a little bit, because he's been right around 230 the past two seasons, and in 2022 it was 258. So man, if we can get up over 250 with like a near 20-30 season, I don't think that Cedric Mullins can have a career year, because I don't think he will top a 30-30 season that he did in 2021. But I wouldn't be surprised if he has maybe his best season since 2021 here in a contract year.
Yeah, and I don't even know that the contract year would be the thing there. But, I mean, remember how bad he was at the start of last year.
Yeah.
And the way he turned things around about a third of the way into it, his final 87 games, he had 277 with an 834 OPS. Prior to that, 174 with a 532 OPS. So if normal Mullins is what we saw for the final 60% of the season, then I mean that's enough right there to make it the second best year of his career.
All right, let's talk about Joe Ryan, who had a mixed start here against the Astros. 5 innings, 4 runs allowed, 6 strikeouts, 2 homers allowed, had 10 whiffs on 83 pitches. And so far, he's profiling more like the pitcher he was in 2023 than the pitcher that he was last season. The velocity has been down a little bit. He's relying much more on his fastball so far. It's only 2 starts. Things can change, obviously. But coming back from that shoulder strain last season, and the fact that I was watching this start, his velocity, he was like 94, 95 in the first inning. And by the time he was in the 5th inning, he was at like 90, 91. So maybe he's still building up, but I think it's a little bit concerning. Scott, what if Joe Ryan is more like the pitcher from 2023 than he was last season?
Yeah, this is a tough one, because last year was the exception in terms of how hard he threw. Even with his average fastball velocity being down even more in the second start of 2025 than in the first start, it's still velocity like we saw for the first 3 years of his career. And we still generally liked him for the first 3 years of his career. Now, I know 2023 specifically things went off the rails because he had, I think it was a groin injury that messed up his delivery, and he was just getting crushed with home runs for I think most of the final third of the season. And I know you and I didn't like him coming into last year because of that. Then he had the new velocity and made us look rather dumb. But that really bad 2023 season, 11 K per 9 for Joe Ryan. And the year before, 2022, when he was still averaging about the same velocity he is now, 13-8, 3.55 ERA, 110 WHIP, more than a strikeout per inning. That's what I think is the more likely scenario. If Joe Ryan is missing last year's velocity all season long, I think 2022 would be more my expectation. The numbers I just gave you, 355, 110, 9.2 K per 9, rather than 2023, where with the groin injury, it blew up to a 4.51 ERA. And really those numbers from 2022 with the lower velocity aren't that different from 2024 with the higher velocity. The whip was better last year, but it's the same basic profile of elite control guy with a good enough strikeout rate, but fly ball tendencies that sometimes cause the home runs and ERA to get away from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, look, this velocity is going to be something to watch for Joe Ryan, but I think that's fair. I mean, I think we have a pretty good idea of who he is, and maybe just 2023 really got away from him there. But I'm hoping that's all it is, and hoping that, the shoulder thing doesn't pop back up with the velocity, and maybe that's why he's purposely trying to throw with a little bit less velo so far this season. Again, that was Joe Ryan. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we had ourselves a pitcher's duel in Miami. We'll talk about that right after this quick commercial break.
She knows, and I know she knows.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. And Scott, we had ourselves a pitcher's duel out in Milwaukee.
It's time to duel.
First time we've used that this year. Let's talk about it. Nick Lodolo up against Nestor Cortes, who had himself a nice bounce back. Lodolo 6 2/3 innings, 1 unearned run with 4 strikeouts, still only 8 whiffs on 82 pitches in this one. And Nestor Cortes, obviously much better. The only place that he could go was up after his start against the Yankees. 6 shutout innings, 1 hit, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, 11 whiffs on 86 pitches. With that said, velocity does remain down about 2 miles per hour on the fastball here for Nestor Cortes. Scott, what'd you see from Lodolo and Cortes here?
I was happy that Lodolo emphasized the curveball again, threw it nearly 30% of the time. It was 16% in his first start. And that was a little concerning because that's his bread and butter pitch. I mean, as Nick Lodolo's curveball goes, so goes Nick Lodolo. And him losing it because of the blister on his middle finger last year obviously tanked what was looking like a breakout season then. I'm not sure the curveball movement profile is exactly what I'm hoping to see. It's in particular the I don't know, the whole shape is just different, and he got 4 whiffs on it, 8 whiffs total on 82 pitches. It's kind of an underwhelming number as far as that goes. So I'm not totally at ease with where Nick Lodolo is right now, but the results have been fine through 2 starts, obviously. I mean, fine may be underselling it. It's just the lack of whiffs and the lack of strikeouts that has me a little uneasy, but I'm mostly satisfied. And then Cortes, the velocity being down. He not a big velocity guy anyway, but how much can he afford to lose before he just gets tattooed? I know the Reds lineup has been a little iffy so far, and maybe that contributed to his success here. He also hasn't been throwing his sweeper as much, about only half as often as last year. Not that it's like some dominant pitch for him, but he's kind of restricting his arsenal in addition to losing the velocity. So he has me concerned. I think Nestor Cortes is pretty fringy anyway, even when he's going well. But you can usually count on him for a high 3 ERA, a helpful whip, in the long run I'm talking. And 8K per 9. That's, kind of the upside for Cortes. So if any slippage there, I think quickly makes him not so usable.
Yeah, and you bringing up the sweeper usage being down, just a reminder that Cortes dealt with a strained flexor in his left elbow late last season. And, the next time we saw him was in the World Series, giving up a grand slam to Freddie Freeman. So, velocity being down coupled with the sweeper usage down, and he's had some arm troubles the past couple of years. Yeah, I'm more so viewing Nestor Cortes mostly as like a matchup streamer at this point. And next week he's in Colorado against the Rockies, so you definitely do not want to start Nestor Cortes next week. Do any of these pitchers need to be rostered in shallower leagues? Because I kind of view them in a similar light to Nestor Cortes. Tanner Houck, who's been pretty bad in his first 2 starts of the season. Charlie Morton, who, yes, had 10 strikeouts in this start, 16 whiffs. That's great, but also gave up 5 earned runs. And, he's 41 years old, coming off a year with bad ratios. And Merrill Kelly got blasted in Yankee Stadium. He gave up 9 runs over 3 2/3 innings. He allowed 3 homers in this start. And his fastball velocity is down a little bit so far this season as well. Scott, do you think Merrill Kelly, Charlie Morton, and Tanner Houck need to be rostered in shallower leagues right now?
No, I mean, Tanner Houck comes the closest. Tanner Houck, I think, just because his overall numbers were solid last year, he got some benefit of the doubt, was a late round pick in most leagues, but I feel like he had to kind of hit the ground running to retain that spot in those shallower mixed leagues. Because remember, everything kind of collapsed for him in the second half. Ground ball rate, okay, that remained fine, but first 3 months, 8.8 K per nine, 1.6 walks per nine. So he became like an elite strike thrower and nearly a strikeout per inning guy. Final 3 months, 6.2 K per nine, 3.7 walks per nine. So he lost both of those. And that's more in line with what we had been seeing from Houck previously. He'd mostly just been a ground ball guy with some questionable control. And early on, if you want to lump spring in there with it too, it's fine with me because it seems like all a continuation here for Houck. Other than those first 3 months of 2024, just hasn't shown us that much. So I'd be fine dropping him for someone else who's emerging still. I mean, Chris Bubich is out there in more than a quarter of leagues still. And I'm not going to say any of the guys we talk about in the sleeper pitcher segment for week 3, but probably like half of that list I'd be willing to drop Houck for. And that's the most interesting of these three. I think Charlie Morton, he's been just a streamer guy for a couple years now, and somebody who's very likely to crush your whip. I don't have much hope for him in that regard, even if he can miss bats at a decent clip still. And finally, Merrill Kelly. I don't think there's much of anything left here. His velocity is still lagging from 2 years ago. He lost some of it last year in an injury-plagued season, hasn't gained it back this year, and it was marginal stuff to begin with. So I think he's just I don't think there's much of anything left. I think he's going to keep getting crushed too often anyway to really trust him in fantasy.
Here are some names that have moved ahead of both Tanner Houck and Merrill Kelly on Thursday. Dustin May, Reese Olson, Brady Singer, Casey Mize, Jordan Hicks. So I'd be okay dropping Tanner Houck for any of those.
Yeah, sure. I didn't hear them all, but the couple I heard sounded about right.
Dustin May, Reese Olson, Brady Singer, Casey Mize, Jordan Hicks. Yeah, that's fine. Hicks, I'm not totally sold on Hicks, but whatever. I don't have a lot of confidence in Houck at all. If you want to make that swap, it's fine with me. Couple deep league middle infielders who played well here on Thursday and are widely available. Brendan Rodgers, 3 for 4 with a double, 3 RBI. He has started 5 of 7 games for the Astros. And Geraldo Perdomo, who was off to a nice start for the D-backs, 1 for 4 with a grand slam, his first home run of the season. Very deep league stuff here, Scott, like 15 teams or deeper middle infield options. But, if you're desperate, do you like either Brendan Rodgers or Geraldo Perdomo?
I do not like either. I think we know who they are and what they are. As long as they're getting at bats, you get in a deep enough league, anybody who's getting at bats has value. But beyond that, I don't have much hope for either Rodgers or Perdomo.
I will have Scott, in my Tout Wars League, which is 15-team Roto with OBP, I picked up Geraldo Perdomo this week because you had the D-backs as one of your sleeper hitter matchups entering this week. And so far he's been great. He just hit a grand slam. Nice. So I'm happy I did it.
Glad it worked out.
I mostly picked him up to have just a backup middle infielder. He's on a good team type thing, but he has
in 15-team Roto
lineup.
In 15-team Roto leagues, it can be tough to get a backup shortstop for sure.
Yeah. Quickly run through some other leftovers here from Thursday before we talk about some rankings movers and week 3. But on the hitting side of things, Alex Bregman had his first big game with the Red Sox, 3 for 5 with 2 doubles and his first home run. Tristan Casas is on the board with his first home run of the season. Christian Walker hit his first home run with the Astros. It was a no doubt shot, second deck against Joe Ryan. Aaron Judge had himself a huge game, 3 for 5 with a sock and a shoe, 4 RBI. He is already up to 5 home runs, and it was his first steal of the season. And Jazz Chisholm also had himself a big game, 1 for 4 with a sock and a shoe, his 4th homer, his first steal of the season. Scott, I mean, all these players are expected to be, viable to elite fantasy options, but do you have anything to add on any of them?
I've been kind of worried about Tristan Casas with 40% strikeout rate coming in, and the strikeout rate ran hot all of last season for him, both before the rib injury and after the rib injury, and that's why I began to lose confidence in him as a fantasy asset, particularly since he wasn't exactly discounted coming into the season. He felt like kind of the default pick at first base in the spot where he was slotted. And of course, former top prospect, a lot of upside there. It just, it felt like a leap of faith. And as much as he's striking out early on, okay, so he had the home run today. Hopefully that's the start of something, but I don't know. I'm still pretty concerned about Casas. The rest of these guys, nothing about them nothing about their performance so far has moved me at all, which isn't a knock on any of them. They were just already highly regarded in the first place.
Yep. Some quick stats on Aaron Judge. Last season, it took him 28 games to get to 5 home runs. This season, it took him 6 games. And remember, he ended last season with 58 homers. So we'll see what kind of pace he can keep up for the entirety of the season. Of course, he has to stay healthy too. Also, the only Yankee to reach 500 extra base hits faster than Judge, the only Yankees, were Joe DiMaggio and Lou Gehrig. So we are watching a historic player right now in his prime. And pretty awesome to see.
Definitely.
Yeah. I just feel like sometimes I can, as a Yankee fan, I can take it for granted, like he had the bad postseason or whatever, but man, Aaron Judge really is he's an amazing player. Like he's on a Hall of Fame track. Like he's awesome.
He's the best power hitter since the steroids era, I think, pretty easily, right? Who else is even in that competition?
Yeah, I mean, everyone else I'm thinking of was just better as like a pure hitter, like Pujols and Miguel Cabrera and stuff. But just pure.
Yeah, but you got a guy who's, he hit more home runs than any player in American League history 2 years ago, and then last year he nearly repeated the feat. So it's like there have been 2 players in history with multiple 60 homer seasons, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. But I think it's I don't know that it'll be this year, maybe with the kind of start he's off to, but Judge could do it. Judge could become the third, and without the associations that those other 2 have.
Yep. Some pitching leftovers from Thursday. Hunter Brown is now 2 for 2 in quality starts, 6 innings, 2 runs with 8 strikeouts. He had 14 whiffs on 91 pitches. And 2 names in the deepest of leagues. Taijuan Walker pitched well against the Rockies, 6 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts. And Carlos Carrasco, he was okay in his Yankees debut up against the D-backs, 5 1/3, 3 runs allowed with 5 strikeouts. Scott, anything on Hunter Brown, Taijuan Walker, and Carlos Carrasco?
So Hunter Brown is throwing a lot harder this year. Velocity pretty much across the board up 1 to 2 miles per hour. And there's already a lot to like about him. He's a great ground ball pitcher, gives up weak contact. The strikeout potential, it's decent. It's not amazing. It's kind of why I don't really view Hunter Brown as a potential ace for fantasy, but he's on the next level there. I mean, he could be Max Fried-like in terms of his impact, and he's off to a good start. I think the added velocity can only help. So that's the main takeaway there. Don't see a lot to get excited about with Carrasco. Taijuan Walker, I wanted to mention for him. I don't think there's much to see here either, but he was throwing a lot of pitches, got multiple whiffs on 4 different ones. And we've seen him be streamable in the past. I don't know how long he's going to stay in the Phillies rotation, because obviously he's just filling in for Ranger Suarez. But last year was more of an outlier in its badness than the norm for Taijuan Walker. So I don't know. We'll see if the next couple, I don't even know how many turns he gets, but this was a good first start.
All right, Scott, let's get into week 3 sleepers. And I realize for some people, this might be week 2 if you played the long week 1, but we'll go with week 3 because, if we go by roto lineups, and there was the short week and then the long week, whatever it is. But week 3 sleepers. Let's talk about the schedule. There are 26 teams with 6 games next week, and there are 4 teams with 7. The Red Sox, Royals, Twins, and Blue Jays. What about the Rockies? They have 3 games in Coors Field against the Brewers, and then 3 on the road at the Padres. Before we get into 2-star pitchers, Scott, I wanted to give you an opportunity just to remind everybody about 2-star pitchers and the way things have trended the past couple of years with scheduling and spacing starters out, and sometimes 2-star pitchers not making that second start. It just feels like they are much less reliable than they once were.
They've never been super reliable, but yes, it seems like in recent years, teams have been reluctant to start pitchers even on regular rest. So traditionally, when they're a team would be in line for 7 games in a week, they want to have a day off that week. Well, that meant they had 2 2-star pitchers, the guy going Monday and the guy going Tuesday. Monday, Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday. But in recent years, we've seen that when a team has a stretch of consecutive games like that without a day off, they like to insert a spot starter at some point so that their pitchers stay on extra rest. And that Tuesday starter ends up not getting the start on Sunday because everybody gets pushed back. So it doesn't happen always. And we're so early in this season that we don't know if the trend's going to continue. I presume it will. So I'm going to try and make a concerted effort when I do the 2-star pitcher rankings to, if it's a Tuesday, Sunday situation in a 7-game week, to kind of downgrade those guys a little bit, just because I'm not sure they'll actually make 2 starts, and maybe I'll even signal who they are, certainly in the article, so that you can know there's an added element of uncertainty there that might make you think twice. So because there are only 4 teams playing 7 games this week, that means there are 4 pitchers that are in line for Tuesday, Sunday. It means they might not actually go Sunday. And they are Cole Reagans, who you'd probably start anyway, Pablo Lopez, who you'd probably start anyway, and Tanner Houck, who you'd probably only start with 2 starts. And the second one is at the White Sox. So that's the one you really want to get from him. That's the questionable one.
Yep.
And then Easton Lucas of the Blue Jays, who you're probably not thinking about at all.
All right, well, let's start with start or sit these fringe 2-star pitchers. And look, Freddie Peralta, most weeks he's locked in. I totally get that. One of his starts is in Coors Field. One is in Arizona. I will point out it's very cold in Coors Field this time of year, but still just crazy stuff happens there all the time. I assume we're starting him, Scott, but matchups are pretty scary here for Freddie Peralta.
Yeah, I still have him as a must start, though. It's a big group. Like half my starting pitcher rankings are must start, and he's on the lower end of that. I have him 13th among the 15 must start options.
All right, let's talk about Justin Steele, who, again, he's most of the time he's just locked in. He's a must-start pitcher, but he's struggling with home runs early on in the season, and next week he gets the Rangers and at the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's those are difficult matchups for sure, and he is struggling, so that's why I have Justin Steele outside of my must-start pitchers. But he is still in the advisable in most cases category. Certainly points leagues, I'd run him out there. In categories leagues, you'll have to weigh how much you want to protect your ratio stats versus getting extra strikeouts, getting more possibilities at wins. Dodgers aren't going to go 162-0. It's a chance he could win that start.
All right, next up we have Jose Barrios, who is at the Red Sox and at the Orioles. So some pretty tough matchups there.
Yeah, and Jose Barrios obviously is a bit of a random number generator, as Chris pointed out the other day. In the long run, the numbers are where you want them to be. So I'd rather not try and play the guessing game with him if I can help it. There hasn't been a lot of attrition at starting pitcher yet, so you may have the option of picking and choosing, and okay, maybe you want to leave Jose Barrios out with those two tough matchups. I'll probably start him since it's two matchups, but it's not a sure thing.
And the last name I had on the list was Tanner Houck, who, we don't know if he's going to make that second start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be points leagues only, and I wouldn't mind just dropping him and assuming he won't make the two starts.
All right, Scott, who are some two-star pitchers that you are looking to add and stream, names that are under 70% rostered?
Okay. We have Casey Mize, who apparently this is a case of a guy already losing two-start status, looking like he'd have two-start status one week, but then it gets pushed back to the next week. I don't even remember what happened with the Tigers rotation, but he looks like he's in line for two starts next week, Yankees and Twins. So Yankees matchup's definitely a tough one. Twins, they've had a hard time hitting so far, and Mize look great with that revamped splitter. If you're looking for a two-start sleeper, I think he's probably the best one. Hayden Wesneski, much more available, only 22% rostered, and two matchups that are pretty favorable at Seattle versus the Angels. I don't think Wesneski is as good as Casey Mize, so that's a factor. But he does have relief pitcher eligibility, and I think certainly in points leagues, I like Hayden Wesneski as a sleeper for this week. Shane Smith, highly available. He gets Cleveland and Boston. So the matchups could be better, but they're not terrible. Also relief pitcher eligible, but he does pitch for the White Sox. He did kind of run out of steam in inning 5 in his first start. So not confident even if he pitches well that he'll be in good position for the win, but only 13% rostered and has RP eligibility.
All right, let's slide over to the one-star pitchers, and these names are ones that we've talked a lot more about recently. Pretty exciting names as for the one-star streamers here.
Oh, yeah. Chris Bubich at Cleveland, like I said, still available in more than a quarter of leagues. Drew Rasmussen, same thing. He gets the Braves, which has been a great matchup for pitchers so far. I don't think it'll remain that way. Maybe they come alive this week, but I think Rasmussen is a good enough pitcher that I'd be willing to roll the dice. Brady Singer gets the Pirates this week, coming off a great debut. I guess I'll have another start over the weekend, so we'll see how that looks. But you got like the Pirates matchup either way for Brady Singer. Jose Soriano at Tampa Bay. I think that's a fine matchup for him. Nick Martinez at San Francisco. David Peterson. I think it's going to be a low impact starter for the most part, but if you're just rolling the dice on a streamer, I think he'll be good at limiting damage as a ground ball guy, and he gets the Athletics.
I do worry a little bit about that new venue, Scott. I mean, I know it's only one series, but I was reading an article from Susan Sussler, who covers the Athletics, and she was pointing out that, yeah, she really thinks that offense is going to play up in that ballpark. And she said, I mean, I think jokingly, but she said, I think Brent Rooker might hit 30 home runs just in his home games this season, which was obviously a crazy statement, but
yes, obviously a bit of hyperbole on her part, but I mean, David Peterson's a ground ball guy, so I wouldn't expect him to be that affected by venue anyway.
All right, let's move over to the hitters and the best matchups for week 3. The Mets, Padres, Red Sox, Brewers, and the Reds. The worst hitter matchups, Cardinals, Rangers, Mariners, Braves, and the Yankees. Scott, who are your favorite sleeper hitters for next week?
So there are some weeks when I'm choosing sleeper hitters and it's like, oh, the matchups work out so that there are these players who are just happen to be attractive pickups regardless. And so obviously if they have good matchups, why not play them? This is not one of those weeks. This is a week where I could choose the really low end hitters who happen to have good matchups, or I could choose the interesting hitters whose matchups could be better, but they're not so bad. And I did the latter. You know, I had Michael Massey as a possibility with the Royals playing 7 games, only one against a left-hander. I had Pavin Smith who I mentioned earlier. Diamondbacks have pretty good matchups, only one left-hander. But in all honesty, I'm not starting Pavin Smith or Michael Massey over Kyle Manzardo. It's just, I'm not going to recommend them over Manzardo or Torkelson or a bunch of hitters who qualify for this list just because they happen to have better matchups. Not going to do that because I want to do it myself. So who I do have here is Jake Cronenworth. The Padres, you mentioned, have the second best matchups, and he's off to a pretty nice start. It's available in nearly half of CBS Sports leagues, eligible at 2 positions. I have Rhys Hoskins, who is not off to a great start, but I think he's good. Brewers have the 4th best matchup. They have that series at Coors Field to begin the week that you pointed out, Frank. And I'm actually opened up the 10-day forecast for Denver. Highs at the start of next week are in the 60s and 70s. So it should be fine weather-wise.
Nice.
So like Rhys Hoskins. Kyle Manzardo, mentioned him. The Guardians have decent matchups. They do have 2 left-handers on the schedule. Manzardo had a great performance against the left-hander on opening day and then sat out against Kyle Hart for some reason. So it's still unclear how much he's going to sit against lefties. That gives me some pause, 2 lefties again. But, opens against the White Sox and no lefties in that series. Let's see. Who else? Spencer Torkelson. Tigers matchups are kind of middling, but I think Torkelson is available enough that I got to mention him here. Max Kepler is available in 3/4 of CBS Sports leagues, and he's been playing lefties, righties regardless. He gets a series against the Cardinals at least, so the matchups are fine. TJ Friedl, the Reds have the 5th best matchups, and I like him out of the leadoff spot for them. Trevor Story has a couple steals and a home run already. The Red Sox have the 3rd best matchups. Ryan Mountcastle off to a slow start, but he faces a bunch of pitchers that can be susceptible to home runs. Merrill Kelly, Brandon Pfaadt, Bowden Francis, Jose Barrios. I think there's a decent chance Mountcastle gets going this week. Hunter Goodman and Otto Lopez, I think 2 of the early risers at their respective positions. Like I said, like we've mentioned, the Rockies have their first home series, so we'll see how Goodman fares in that. Catcher eligible, obviously. Otto Lopez gets to face some shaky pitchers in a series with the Nationals especially, and has been providing surprising power. We know he has some speed. I think if you need middle infield help, he's not a bad choice this week.
All right, again, those were your week 3 sleepers coming up for the next week, and we were going to talk about rankings, risers, and fallers, but we're kind of out of time here. Scott wrote about it on the site, so if you want to check that out, feel free, cbssports.com/fantasy/baseball, and if you click on our rankings tab, you could just check out all of our rankings yourself, and they're by each position. We have for head-to-head points and for roto and category leagues, so make sure to check out the rankings on the site. A couple bullpen updates here from Thursday. For the Phillies, Jordan Romano entered in the 8th inning with a 2-run lead, facing 9-1-2 in the Rockies lineup. He gave up a double, but got out of the inning unscathed. And Jose Alvarado then got the 9th inning with a 3-run lead. He gave up 1 run on a walk and 3 hits. He struck out 3 for his first save. I don't know exactly how this is going to shake out, Scott. The way that I'm leaning right now is that I think Romano and Alvarado are just going to continue to kind of split closer duties for the time being, at least.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out exactly why they deployed them the way they did this time. So Tolio was up in the 9th, but he's a switch hitter. I guess I don't know. I mean, you could point to the fact that Romano got the top of the lineup in the 8th with Brenton Doyle and Ezequiel Tovar. Is okay, maybe Romano's getting preferential treatment, but you got 2 days in a row Alvarado working the 9th, once with a 4-run lead, so it wasn't quite a save situation, and then here for the save. Yeah, I think it's something. I think it's something we're going to have to obsess over, at least for the first month here, before it gets sorted out.
All right, over to the Astros. Josh Hader struck out 1 for his 3rd save. For the Brewers, Trevor McGill was unavailable after pitching the previous 2 days. Joel Payamps got the ninth inning with a 1-run lead, and he struck out one for his first save of the season. And for the Yankees, Devin Williams is out on the paternity list, so Luke Weaver got the final 4 outs for his first save of the season. To stream or not to stream on Friday. So, names that stood out: Tyler McGill up against the Blue Jays, Max Meyer at the Braves, Zach Littell at the Rangers, Nick Martinez at the Brewers, Jose Soriano versus the Guardians.
Yeah. So I think the best choices here, those are all fine. I don't hate any of them. My top choice would probably be Nick Martinez at the Brewers because they've had some trouble scoring here at the start of the year. Jose Soriano, ground ball pitcher. He tends to excel at run prevention, limits damage, if nothing else, doesn't get the big strikeout numbers, but then again, neither does Nick Martinez. So those are my favorite 2 pitchers of this group, and I think I'd rank them 1 and 2 for Friday. Though Meyer at the Braves, that could go great the way they've been performing, and any of them are usable.
And then on Saturday, the names that stood out here: Reese Olson against the White Sox, Eduardo Rodriguez at the Nationals, Griffin Canning is facing the Blue Jays, Brady Singer is at the Brewers, and AJ Smith-Shawver home against the Marlins.
Don't like this group as much. Of course, Reese Olson against the White Sox. I feel like that's a must, maybe the best streamer of the entire weekend. Brady Singer, again, with Milwaukee struggling, and as good as he looked in his first start, I'd be okay with him too. And AJ Smith-Shawver, obviously, that's an attractive matchup against the Marlins, and he showed us some upside first time through. Still doesn't have much of a history of actually delivering fantasy relevant starts. So I'd probably rank him 3rd of this group, but if you wanted to roll the dice on upside with that matchup, Smith-Shawver is somebody you could gamble on.
And then on Sunday, all 3 of these names are more than streamers, but they are available. So Chris Bubich home against the Orioles, Drew Rasmussen at the Rangers, Jordan Hicks home against the Mariners, like all 3 of those. And then we'll mention David Peterson up against the Blue Jays. I don't think I would do it, but man, if you're desperate and you want to go for it, Martin Perez at the Tigers. I'm not doing it, but somebody might.
Yeah, it wouldn't be me either.
All right, I'm assuming you agree with all those other ones. They're all great. Cool.
Yeah, I'm more because of who they are than because of what the matchups are. Certainly, Bubich against the Orioles, tough matchup, but I think he's good enough that I'd start him.
All right, we're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again next week. Bye-bye.